is an ABC News special, The 2000 Vote. Now reporting, Peter Jennings.
Welcome back to our coverage of election night from our election headquarters here at Times Square in New York. It is now 8 o'clock Eastern Time. The polls have closed in 16 more states and the District of Columbia. This will make for 27 states which have already closed, some of which we've been able to project, others have been too close to call. But we are now able to make a projection in the state of Florida. ABC News projects that Al Gore wins the state of Florida and its 25 electoral votes give him the first big state momentum of the evening. This is the biggest state where the race has been close and the fourth biggest electoral prize. We also now take a look at Pennsylvania, the other of the big three battleground states. We reckon that is still too close to call. Similarly with Michigan, we believe Michigan, 18 electoral votes, is still too close to call, one of the real battleground states this year. In North Carolina, we project that George W. Bush wins the 14 electoral votes there. Mr. Gore did not compete very strongly for it. In Missouri, another of the battleground states, we believe it is currently too close to call based on the information we have. The polls have just closed there. In Tennessee, Mr. Gore's home state, too close to call, 11 electoral votes there. In Maine, still too close to call there with its 4 electoral votes. Maine getting a lot of attention at the presidential level this year. In Illinois, we project that Al Gore is the winner. 22 electoral votes, not a great surprise, fairly tightly fought at the end, but it has voted with the winner in every election but one since 1920. We had projected that Al Gore is indeed the winner in Texas with its 32 electoral votes. I beg your pardon, I take that back. That's George Bush in Texas. In Alabama, we project that George Bush is the winner with its 9 electoral votes, one of the most reliably Republican states in presidential politics. We project Mr. Bush is the winner in Mississippi with its 7 electoral votes. We project Mr. Bush is the winner in Oklahoma, which borders Texas, but would not be a competitive state. In any case, its 8 electoral votes go to Mr. Bush. Kansas, not competitive in presidential politics, very Republican. We project that it's going to go to Mr. Bush. In New Jersey, we project that the winner is Mr. Gore. Again, not an enormous surprise. Mr. Bush made a last-minute stop on Saturday before the election, but it goes to Mr. Gore. We project that Mr. Gore is the winner in Massachusetts. Gave Mr. Clinton his biggest winning margin, very strong Democratic tradition in Massachusetts. And we project that Mr. Gore is the winner in Connecticut with the help of Mr. Joe Lieberman, his vice presidential candidate, and we project that Mr. Gore is the winner in Maryland. Now let's pause for just a few seconds now to let some stations join us as ABC 2000 continues. Let's pick up our projections again. I just told you that Maryland, the winner is Al Gore with its 10 electoral votes there, state where the registered Democrats outnumber Republicans, and Democrats hold both the governor's seat and both the Senate seats. We project that Mr. Gore is the winner in Delaware. This state has voted with the winner in every election since 1952. So it's the presidential bellwether state with the longest streak. And in the District of Columbia, also to no great surprise, we project that Mr. Gore is the winner in the District of Columbia. Now here's what the electoral vote count looks like so far. Mr. Gore taking a spurt there with that win in Florida and New Jersey. And Mr. Bush has 130 electoral votes. Mr. Gore has 101, and 270 are needed to win. That is what the big map looks like at the moment now. It looked in the final polls before the election much more red than blue, but remember that Mr. Gore's strength, now having picked up Florida, is on the East Coast. In the Northeast, New York is yet to be decided, and California as well. Now let's go back and look here now at Sam Donaldson with some Senate calls. Sam.
Well, Peter, a big win for the Democrats in Delaware. ABC News projects that the Democratic Governor Tom Carper has defeated the veteran incumbent Senator Bill Roth in Delaware. Age was the issue. Roth at 79 actually fainted twice during the campaign. As the football color man would say, that didn't help very much. In any event, we found that in Delaware, interestingly enough, 2 out of 10 voters made up their minds in the last week of this election, and most of them went for Tom Carper. More projections in Connecticut. ABC News projects that Joe Lieberman has retained his Senate seat there. Of course, if he wins the vice presidency, he'll resign that, and a Republican governor will undoubtedly appoint a Republican to that seat. In Maine, ABC News projects that Olympia Snowe, the Republican incumbent, retains her seat, beating the state Senate President Mark Lawrence. In Maryland, veteran Democratic Senator Paul Sarbanes retains his seat, according to our ABC News projection. He beat Paul Rappaport. In Massachusetts, Edward Kennedy has been in the Senate for 38 years, and ABC News projects, Peter, he'll be there another 6 years. He has beaten a Republican named Jack E. Robinson, who didn't put up much of a race, I may say. In Mississippi, the majority leader currently of the United States Senate, Trent Lott, has easily retained his seat, according to our ABC News projection, against Troy Brown. Lott spent $4 million. Troy Brown spent $47,000, but it probably wasn't the money that made the difference. In Tennessee, ABC News projects that the heart-lung surgeon, the incumbent Republican Senator Bill Frist, will retain his seat, having beaten Jeff Clark. In Texas, Kay Bailey Hutchinson, according to our ABC News projection, retains her Senate seat. She came in 1993 at the beginning of the Clinton administration when Lloyd Bentsen was made Secretary of the Treasury. And in Pennsylvania, ABC News projects that Rick Santorum, the incumbent Republican senator, has won re-election, defeating Ron Klink, the Democratic congressman from Pittsburgh. Peter.
Thanks very much, Sam. We're also able to make a presidential projection in the state of Michigan. ABC News now projects that Michigan has been won by Mr. Gore. Now, this was about as tough a presidential campaign as there was in the entire country. Combination of labor, Ralph Nader, the governor, the National Rifle Association. Terry Moran is down in Nashville. Terry Moran, I gather that this is going to be one that is going to warm the cockles of the Gore people's hearts as of now.
Absolutely, Peter. And while the plaza behind me here may be empty now because they're not going to let people in for another hour, there are lots of people lined up outside as these results, as we call these states, come in. You can hear the cheers from 100 yards away and feel the enthusiasm. I remember coming to Nashville back in May and having one of the top Gore strategists say, we are going to play and we are going to win in Florida. And at the time, I and a lot of other people considered that a bluff. They were serious about it. Joe Lieberman spent enough time in Florida to establish residency and vote almost. And in Michigan, there's no question that was about labor. Al Gore ran as a labor Democrat, and you could feel in the last days of this election the enthusiasm for the first time, almost a kind of physical affection for Gore as the standard bearer of labor in some of these big rallies. They did it for him in Michigan.
Thanks very much, Terry. Appealing George Stephanopoulos very much to the Democratic base, part of his populist campaign this year.
Absolutely. Michigan, 40% of the vote in Michigan came from union households, and they went about 60-30 for Al Gore, but it wasn't always easy for Al Gore. The head of the UAW, Steve Yokich, was very late in endorsing Al Gore. The head of the Teamsters was very late.
UAW did give them the day off today to go to vote, right?
Day off, and there are 900,000 union members in Michigan. It looks like it could have made the difference.